And I've always wondered about these judges, about how they come up with their persona. So we talked a little bit about this already, but I've seen some clips of what you've done, and some of them you seem very tough, and some you seem very fair. But is it an act? I mean, do you consider yourself an actress?
Not at all. I don't consider myself an actress at all. And we are totally an unscripted show.
Oh,
So we have no writers. We continued filming during the writers' strike because we have no writers on staff. And everything you see us say, we are saying in real time.
oh
Nobody
wow.
nobody is writing us notes. We don't have teleprompters. Nobody gives us a script. So, everything is really organic and comes really from us. It is very much reality TV as opposed to acting. I
Right.
don't feel like I'm acting at all.
So has doing the show become your primary job, or are you an acting lawyer at the same time and representing real clients?
So I still have a full-time practice. I'm in my real office right now. I do that more of the time right now, but I am really loving not only Hot Bench, but a lot of the legal commentary stuff. So I'm
Right.
kind of trying to move more in that direction now that it's been a couple of years and I've really gotten a chance to see that I love it.
Right, exactly. All right, so let's get into the legal commentary stuff and let's go through some of the cases that are popular right now. The first thing I want to ask you before we get into it, what is your personal belief on the difference in law and facts versus and proving your case based on facts versus public opinion and that winning a case? What are your thoughts on that?
I mean, obviously, depending on the case, what is happening in the court of public opinion can be much more important than what's happening in real court. Right
Mm,
now, that doesn't happen for the majority of cases, but
right.
like for Blake Lively and Justin Baldoni, I really believe what's happening in the court of public opinion is going to be more important for the two of them than the outcome of the legal case.
Oh, I
So
see what you're saying. It'll affect them and their career more so than whatever monetary issue goes on at the end of the case.
exactly. And I think it was the same for Johnny Depp and Amber Heard. I mean, obviously, that was a lot of money she had to pay. But
Hmm.
in terms of the trajectory of their life and career, the outcome of what people thought was much more important than what happened in the trial, I think.
But do you think it ever affects what happens in the trial and the jurors, or do you think that people can really be that partial in there?
So I think the number of cases where the jury really has an idea of what's going on publicly is very small.
Right.
I think they do a very good job. It's not perfect in very high profile cases, but I think they do a really good job of sussing out which jurors have prior information.
Hmm.
So I think that, there's going to be a little bit of bias, if you will, that jurors bring into the process.
Right.
But I think they always do that. It's not just because they've heard something in the case. It could be because they have a sheriff as a brother. So they like sheriffs and the witness is a sheriff, or a doctor did something bad to them in the past. So they don't like doctors.
Right.
Everybody's got life that they bring into it.
Right, right, right. Okay, so in following the Blake Lively and Justin Baldoni legal dispute at this point, who do you think is winning in the court of public opinion?
Justin Baldoni, without a doubt.
Why do you think that is?
I think he's crushing it in the court of public opinion. And I think, it's very hard these days, I think as it should be, to come back from sexual harassment allegations, from, those sort of, abuse and domestic violence type things. And so when that gets out there, I think it's very hard for someone to defend themselves.
Hmm.
And somehow he's managed, I think, to turn the tide, and not by just being the meaner person or by smearing her as a person, but by coming and showing that her allegations are not true or
Right.
don't appear to be true, because I don't think we really know yet.
Well, but what are the legal implications of publicizing legal evidence online? So he created a whole website and put all the evidence on here. Doesn't he have to save that for trial? And I saw somewhere that the judge actually ruled that this could be a problem and they have to have like a gag order about doing this anymore.
So Blake Lively asked for a gag order, and this is kind of a perfect example of how lawyers really spin what happens in court, right?
Okay.
Lawyers came out and said, "We won. He ruled that they can't do this." That's not what happened. What the judge did was deny the request for a gag order, which was a big loss for Blake Lively. But he added, as judges often do, we all have to remember that there are rules about what you can and cannot put out there when there's an ongoing case. So the issue with what Justin Baldoni did, very smart. It was a smart move by his attorneys. They only actually technically put up on that website court documents.
Okay.
But what they had done, they publicized other things that were not court documents. But there's nothing wrong with publicizing court documents. They're public documents. You can get them on the court's website.
Okay.
But what they did was they put a bunch of stuff that normally wouldn't be in court documents
I
so
see
that
what
they
you're
could
saying.
say that. And, I think, in my opinion, I think,
Sorry, was it their response that they
yes,
then put up there? Okay, so they made sure in writing the response they knew what they were doing.
yeah.
Got it.
Oh, yeah, they made it, hundreds of pages. They attached a 170-page timeline to his response, which you're never going to see in any normal case.
Right.
But I think one of the big things that matters here, and one of the reasons the judge said no gag order, is because she started it. I mean,
Mm,
she was the one that initiated this public campaign with the New York Times.
right.
Whether or not that was okay for her to do, I'm not weighing in on. I'm not saying she shouldn't have, but
Hmm.
she started the media blitz and he had to defend himself. And all of the rules surrounding what lawyers can and cannot do publicly rely very heavily on whether you're starting it or you're defending yourself.
Really?
Yes. So the
Huh.
professional rules of conduct, specifically in this case, that they have to follow, depend to a great extent on whether or not the public statements you're making are necessary to defend yourself against accusations that have become public.
I see. Okay. So, and what are your thoughts on this New York Times thing? So, I've done work with the New York Times. I had a huge article that I wrote with them. I had to supply them with years of evidence when they did this. And the only reason I'm bringing this up is because it literally took them 8 months to read, and they had all these, legal advisors and all this stuff happen for it to, even to be able to come out. Okay. So, I when it came out, I said, well, they had to fact check that because I've worked with them and I know how stringent they are about that. But then when you see what Justin put out, you're like, well, wait a minute, they didn't fact check that, or they did, but they took it out of context. What's your thought on that?
Yeah, I mean, it clearly looks like they fell short in some way. And, we know that an article like this does take months to come out. They must have been
Hmm.
working on it for months. And
Hmm.
it's kind of shocking to see some of the things that he put out showing that they published 3 text messages and then omitted the fourth, which shows that they were talking about something totally different.
Right.
So, I think that this could have been something where they were heavily influenced by the publicists, people they have long-standing relationships with,
Right.
craft an article in a particular way.
Right. I mean, and that was really detrimental. That's what sent this off in a whole new direction, I
Yeah,
feel like. Okay, so where do you think this is going? I mean, first of all, before I ask you that, why do you think she even bothered to do this? Do you think it really stemmed from the fact that her reputation, she felt like it was so bad at that moment?
that's the $1 million question. Why would she do this? And that's, I think, one of the biggest arguments in favor of believing her, that
Right.
there's no good reason for her to do this other than she's trying to stand up for herself and the other women on set that she claims this happened to as well.
Mm-hmm.
If that's not the case, the theories I have heard put out there are obviously what you just said, the reputational issue. She just couldn't
Mm-hmm.
stand some bad press, but also that this is part of some campaign to get control over the next movie that's coming out. And
Mm-hmm.
I just don't think we really know enough about that and how this might interact with that to know whether that's a viable argument or not.
Right, right. Well, did you see the movie?
I did. After
Did,
all of this came out, then I saw the movie.
did you like it?
It was fine.
Yeah.
I feel like after it was hyped so much, not necessarily as a good movie, it was a little bit of a letdown, but it was a fine movie. I enjoyed it.
Right. Well, what I found was interesting before all these lawsuits came out was that you remember she did all the press that had nothing to do with domestic violence. He did all the press that had to do with the domestic violence aspect of it. And then she had that really cringeworthy interview where the woman says, congratulations on your baby bump. And she's like, congratulations on yours. That has nothing to do with sexual harassment. Okay. That has to do with just being an asshole. So like that was a terrible look for her. And then I see the lawsuit and I still was like, well, what does that have to do with sexual harassment? So, I felt like she contributed to her own bad press. I didn't think of him having anything to do with it.
Yeah, I totally agree with you. And I think that the evidence that we're seeing come out has supported the argument that this was not some, you know, under the radar smear campaign that was really just, finding every little thing about her, but that it was an organic response
Right.
to, I mean, that interview with any woman who's been pregnant, can sympathize, I think, with that reporter, how awful that is for
Yeah.
somebody to say to you. It's bullying. I mean, it really is. It's the worst kind of bullying. And it was, oof, horrible.